You have probably stood at the top of a tall building and felt it move, just slightly, just enough to notice. And your first instinct was, something is wrong. But here is something nobody tells you. That movement was not an accident. It was not a flaw. The engineers put it there deliberately. The Burj Khalifa, the tallest building on Earth, sways 2 meters at its peak every single day. And that sway is the only reason it is still standing. Here is exactly how. Before we get into why, you need to feel what we are actually talking about. The Burj Khalifa stands 828 meters tall. That is the height of more than 2 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. It weighs approximately 500,000 metric tons. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the weight of 50,000 adult elephants. It has 163 floors. It took 22 million man-hours to build. Over 12,000 workers were on site every single day for 6 years. And at the very top of that structure, right now, the building is moving in a way that most people would find deeply alarming if they knew about it. They designed it to move on purpose. Here is what most people assume. A skyscraper is built to be rigid. The taller the building, the stronger and more fixed it must be. You pour concrete, you stack steel, you bolt everything together as tightly as possible, and the building stands perfectly still forever. That assumption makes complete sense. Every instinct you have about tall structures says the same thing. Make it stronger, make it stiffer, make it immovable. But here is what your intuition is missing. Wind does not care how strong your building is. Wind pushes, and when you build something 828 meters into the sky, the wind at that altitude is not the same gentle breeze you feel on the street below. At the top of the Burj Khalifa, wind speeds can reach 55 meters per second. That is nearly 200 kilometers per hour. Every day. And here is the problem. If you build a perfectly rigid structure, and that structure cannot move when the wind pushes it, the wind does not give up. It keeps pushing. The stress builds inside the steel and concrete until something gives way. A rigid skyscraper in high winds does not bend. It breaks. Here is what is actually happening inside that structure every time the wind blows. The Burj Khalifa is not a solid block. It is engineered to behave more like a living thing than a statue. The entire building is built around a central concrete core. Extending outward from that core are 3 wings, arranged in a Y shape when viewed from above. Each wing is slightly different in length. And this asymmetry, this deliberate irregularity, is one of the most important engineering decisions in the entire building. When wind hits a symmetrical structure, it creates a rhythmic pushing force. The wind swirls around the building in regular pulses, pushing and releasing at a consistent frequency. If that frequency matches the natural vibration of the building, the structure begins to resonate. The vibrations amplify. The stress multiplies. Engineers call this vortex-induced vibration, and it has destroyed bridges. It has collapsed towers. But here is the part that genuinely surprises people. The Burj Khalifa's asymmetric Y shape means the wind never hits the same surface twice in the same way. Every face presents a different profile. The vortices shed off each wing at different frequencies. They never synchronize. They never build into that destructive resonance. The building confuses the wind on purpose, but that is only part of the story. The Burj Khalifa does not just redirect wind forces, it also absorbs them. Deep inside the building, built into the structure itself, are systems designed to allow controlled movement. The building flexes, absorbs, and returns. Think of it like a tall, thin tree in a storm. A rigid, dead tree snaps in high wind. A living tree bends, absorbs the force, and returns to vertical when the wind passes. The flexibility is not weakness. The flexibility is survival. The Burj Khalifa bends like that tree, 2 meters at the top, in normal conditions, by design. And here is where it gets genuinely remarkable, because the same principle is built into almost every tall structure around you. And once you understand it, you will never look at a tall building the same way again. Think about the CN Tower in Toronto. It sways up to 1.8 meters at its observation deck in high winds. Engineers designed it that way deliberately. Think about the Taipei 101 in Taiwan, one of the most earthquake and typhoon-prone places on Earth. Inside the building, hanging from the 92nd floor to the 88th floor, is a giant steel ball weighing 660 metric tons. When the building sways, the ball swings in the opposite direction. It acts as a counterweight, reducing the sway by up to 40%. That ball has swung visibly during typhoons while the building remained perfectly stable. Think about the Tokyo Skytree, the second tallest structure on Earth. It uses a central shaft that moves independently from the outer structure. absorbing seismic energy during earthquakes while the outer shell flexes around it. Every tall building on Earth is moving, constantly, subtly, invisibly to the people inside. The only question is whether the engineers designed it to move safely or whether the forces will eventually find the weakness. In 1940, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapsed, not because the wind was unusually strong, but because the wind hit the bridge at exactly the right frequency, and the bridge could not shed those forces. It began to oscillate. The oscillations grew. Within hours, the entire span twisted itself apart and fell into the water. The engineers had calculated wind loads they had designed for strength. What they had not understood was resonance. After Tacoma Narrows, everything changed. Every bridge, every tower, every skyscraper built since then has been designed with that lesson at its core. The Burj Khalifa is the most refined expression of that lesson ever constructed. Here is the connection that most people never make. The same principle that allows the Burj Khalifa to sway 2 meters safely is the reason your car has suspension instead of being bolted rigidly to its axles. A rigid connection would transmit every bump directly into the frame. The car would shake itself apart on any road that was not perfectly smooth. The suspension absorbs. The car body remains stable. The wheel moves. The passenger does not feel it. It is the reason earthquakes destroy rigid, unreinforced buildings first, while flexible, modern structures survive. It is the reason tall trees survive storms that snap telephone poles. The pole is rigid, the tree is flexible. In a storm, flexibility is survival. Every structure, every system, every engineered object that must survive dynamic forces has the same fundamental choice: fight the force or absorb it. The Burj Khalifa weighs 500,000 metric tons and stands 828 meters tall, and the engineers who built it chose to let it move. So the next time you see a photo of the Burj Khalifa, know that what you are looking at is not a monument to rigidity. It is a monument to the understanding that controlled movement is stronger than resistance. The building sways 2 meters at its peak, right now, in normal wind, and that movement is not a flaw, it is the engineering. And if the Burj Khalifa surprised you, wait until you find out how they keep the Leaning Tower of Pisa from falling, because the solution they found is something nobody expected. And it has been working silently for over 30 years. Subscribe so you do not miss it.